Have you been thinking about purchasing a house? And you have all of these questions you've been wondering, and you're just thinking, you're trying to read everything on the internet, and it just confuses you even more. Stick around. I'm going to go through some of the questions people have asked recently and in the past, and I'm going to try to combine them and make this journey a little bit easier for you. If we haven't met before, my name is Eric Hudson, and I help people here in the Las Vegas area buy and sell homes. If you're looking for a little bit of help, call, text, or email. My information is down below. Better yet, get on my calendar. That way you know that time has been reserved just for you. And if you find this video to be just a little bit helpful to you, can you do me a quick favor? Hit that subscribe button, click a like, and hit that bell notification so you'll be able to find out when all the new information is released, because I put out information every single week to help folks like you who are looking to make that smooth move to Las Vegas. Now, I'll be honest, I get questions all the time, and I answer them. But I figure if somebody has a question, you may have a question. And I'm gonna go through these. They're not in any particular order or anything. And I'm just gonna do them and kind of compile them right here. For those who don't know, I do a live stream every Thursday, and we have Q&A there. You can ask questions live and kind of find out, the answers to the questions that you've been having. Sometimes you don't know the questions to ask, so because someone else asked them, it's a little bit easier. So now, just sit back, relax. We're gonna answer a few questions for you. Hopefully make your home buying journey a little bit easier. Caveat, a lot of the answers I'm giving are for Las Vegas. One of the reasons people get confused is they're looking at all this information and it's all over the place. Remember, we have 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, plus Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam. All of those come with different ways to do real estate. One of the biggest problems I have, or any agent has, is when someone from Michigan moves here and they keep talking about they were a real estate agent. They were a real estate agent in Michigan where the laws are completely different. So let's go ahead and talk through some questions that I've had. And I'm just gonna go through the little sheet. I typed a few little things down here, and in no particular order, let's go ahead and get it done. So number one, every once in a while you get this from a buyer. So let's say a seller, we'll use a $500,000 house as an example. In general, your EMD, earnest money deposit, the amount to hold the house, is about 1% of the sales price of the house. So 1% of 500,000, it should be $5,000. But every once in a while, you come across somebody who wants 10,000 or 15,000 for this earnest money deposit. Do you have to pay that? Because you'll have people going like, can I pay 5,000? Guess what? What they put out there is what they would like. If it's too high, I already said my red flags are already up. Sometimes they're out to screw you. Sometimes it's just ignorance. They go like, well, if they're really serious and they give me 15,000, it's more likely to close. It's no more likely to close if they gave you $1. You can put that in the offer, $5,000 in lieu of the 15 they asked. They can accept it or they can't, or you can come back and become a point of negotiations. Don't worry about that. It's all part of the negotiations. It's like they put the house out there for $500,000. Do you have to pay $500,000 for it? We already know the answer to that. You don't. Okay, I get this one so often. Can I move in early? AKA, I'm moving here from Detroit, Michigan. I'm making places up. And I don't want to stay in a hotel. It's an empty house. Can I move in a week early? Short answer, yes. Long answer, it's probably not going to work for you. It is fraught with peril. So let's talk about that situation, because it's probably, you're thinking about it right now. That issue with the doctor who had the house and rented it out to that Harvard grad, and she pulled some tricks, stayed way longer, didn't pay anything, then demanded $100,000. Guess what? That's kooky California. Here, we don't play that. So if you move in and something happens, You're gonna be out on the streets. You can't go, you're on the streets, okay? So don't ever have to worry about that. Even when you're buying a home, and let's say the seller goes, well, I gotta stay an extra week. Well, you should have thought about that before they signed on the dotted line, because when you signed and they signed, that's it. We don't have kooky laws. All somebody has to do is go to Metro, North Las Vegas or Henderson. We closed on this house and they're refusing to leave. Boot it. Don't worry about it. Oh, by the way, if you try to move in early, worry about it because you will get booted. Here's another one. Most of the brokers around here, I can note one in particular, large brokerage. They won't even bring it up to their seller. So if I go like, I already know the answer. My client is asked, can they move in a week early because the house is empty, blah, 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 blah. And they'll come back, no. They didn't even ask the seller. It's their broker's policy because they don't want to be into it. It's actually a rental agreement when you move in early. Let's say a week early, it's literally a rental agreement for 1 week. You got to pay deposits, the whole nine. So don't think you're just going to move in and have a place to stay for free for a week. You're going to have to pay something. And on the opposite side of that, there are sellers who want to stay after the closing for multiple reasons, including their next house isn't going to be ready. Now, this one is way more common. Matter of fact, sometimes it's part of the negotiations process, especially when the everything is going really good, like when we had an economy like two and a half years ago. I mean, that's something you offered to the seller. You could stay for an extra month for free. Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. They do stay an extra month, but they're gonna have to pay for it. Biggest problem I've seen with sellers is they say the same thing. It's magical how it happens somehow. Well, it's my right to stay a month. What do you mean they want rent from me? Just like when you try to move in early, if you try to stay late, guess what? You have to do a rental type agreement. There's actually specific paperwork for that when the seller has to stay past. And the biggest problem I see every time is the seller's going, why am I renting my house? Guess what? It's not their house. The day it closes, it's the buyer's house, not the seller's. The seller must be out at time of closing. Not the morning of closing, time of closing. If you close at noon, when you show up, that seller better be gone. Or you can call the police. Just letting you know. When I do my little briefings for buyers, I started like this, because you're gonna ask me a question and you're gonna ask, when am I going to get the keys? Don't worry, I know you're gonna ask me this 5 times throughout the transaction. The closer we get, you're gonna ask me twice. I'm gonna give you the answer right now of when you get the keys. You get the keys when the transaction closes and is recorded with the county. That is when you are the owner of the house. Now you're home. Not a minute early, a minute later, you're still the owner of the house. So what do I mean by recording at the county? So how does that happen? Once you pay your down payment, VA doesn't have down payments, you pay your closing cost. I hate to tell this, especially the older veterans, VA has closing costs. You cannot roll them into the loan. And the bank funds, if you're taking out a loan, they put all that together and then they go, okay, the paperwork is good. The escrow officer sends it off to the county, and once the county records, it belongs to you. We go pass over the keys and we do a happy dance. For those of you who are east of the Mississippi, I know things work different there. Those are lawyer states. This is an escrow state, not a lawyer state. So chances are you will never ever see the seller, or if you're selling your house, the buyer. Most of the times you're never gonna see them because the seller and buyer sign their paperwork separately. The seller could be in California. The buyer could be in Michigan. Believe it or not, you don't even have to be here to sign the paperwork. Now out east, what they do is they literally sit around a table and they sign, document, pass it over, everyone signs, and when it's all said and done, omni VOR, that keys are passed on to the buyer. That doesn't happen. Once it records, we go to the house, take the lockbox, open it. Here's your key. Simple. You don't have to keep asking. The key is given to you at that time, unless there is some kind of prior arrangement. And I don't mean moving in. Sometimes there are reasons to get the key early. You gotta be real careful with that, because I've seen some crazy things. I had one time where the buyer wanted to just move like his appliances and stuff into the garage. And a day or two later, I get a call from the agent. He goes, "Have your buyers moved into the house?" I'm like, "No, all they did was move their appliances and stuff into the garage." I get a call about a day or so later, and they're going, "The air conditioning's out." I'm like, "What do you mean the air conditioning's out?" "Well, the air conditioning went out this morning." Okay, I'll talk to the listing agent, see what can be done about it, because you haven't taken over the house yet. But how do you know the air conditioning's out? Goes, "Well, we moved into the house. It didn't make sense just to put our stuff in the garage." This is one of the reasons people don't let you do that stuff, because you'll be going like, "Can I put my stuff in the garage?" Well, now you have a key, and that happens more than you think. Fortunately, it closed, because if not, actually the laws may have been a little bit different back then. They had to enact these laws. They weren't as crazy as California, but we did have some squatter issues here in Las Vegas. We don't have those anymore. The laws are good. Unless you're a squatter, they're not good. The next one is kind of a series of questions I've had. I'm gonna kind of string them together here. It has to do with the walkthrough. So your walkthrough is actually a little bit different now. Your walkthrough is not flipping on lights going like, "That light doesn't work, I'm not closing." Now, if that light was supposed to be fixed and you did it on the request for repairs and it was agreed to, that is an issue. But just because the light doesn't work now, it's not an issue. Does the seller have to be out of the house at the time of walkthrough? No. Walkthrough can be done up to 3 days prior to closing. I'm going to go into that. I say do not do it 3 days prior to closing. I'm going to tell you a little story. I had a house, was representing the buyers, and they kept going like, "So when do we go do the walkthrough?" I'm like, you're supposed to do it like 3 days prior and everything. We're like 2 weeks out. "Okay, when are we gonna do the walkthrough?" Well, about a week out. We normally do it, a couple of 3 days out or so. "When are we gonna do the?" So finally, about 3 days, because they were just so anxious to do the walkthrough for some reason. Do the walkthrough. A few days later, we close. In betwixt the walkthrough and the closing and us getting the keys, someone broke into the house, ripped all of the wiring out of the walls, because the house had copper wiring and copper pipes and everything else. It was an older house. After that, I didn't do any more walkthroughs 3 days prior. I did my walkthroughs the day of closing, at the worst, the date prior. And it was for that reason. That way you don't know what you don't know. You did it 3 days out. A lot can happen in 3 days, okay? What happens if the house had flooded? Well, you signed off on the house as far as the condition 3 days ago, but a pipe burst. It's now your problem. So the day before, day up, and guess what? This one will blow you away. The signing and the closing are two different things. You can sign 2 days ahead of time, 3 days ahead of time, as long as you have what's known as clear to close. If you're using a loan, if you're paying cash, you can sign whenever you want. But let's say you're closing on the 15th. Well, you could have signed on the 14th, the 13th even, and not have your walkthrough until the 15th. Well, how does that work? All you got to do is tell the escrow officer, "Do not send a record until I give you a call that the walkthrough has happened." And you go, walk through and go like, "Everything's here. Everything's good." Ring, ring. Ring, ring. You can send a record. Recording here is a lot faster than it used to be. It used to be if you sent it record like in the morning, because they signed, that morning it was a sign and fund, you'd be lucky if it recorded that afternoon, it may be the next day. Now, they've computerized it to such a degree, it's unbelievable. It normally records within 1 hour. So if you sign the day prior, you're probably going to have your keys by about 10 to 11 a.m. on the day you're supposed to close. So that's when you get your keys, and that's when you talk about walkthrough. Again, during the walkthrough, or the seller doesn't have to be out. I had this realtor one time I don't know if he's trying to gaslight me or something, or he just really didn't know what he was talking about, because he said just the craziest stuff. And as he called me up to schedule the walkthrough 3 days prior, he goes, "Oh, and just to remind you, when we do our walkthrough, your clients have to be completely moved out and all of their furniture gone." No, they don't. I don't know, I had to correct this guy a lot of times. They don't have to be out. Oh, here's one. Do they have to clean the house? Yes. But the contract says broom swept. I've run across people who are going like, they're not gonna send a cleaning service out and get it cleaned for us to move in. They're not required to. You may talk to them and ask if they'll do it. I've seen people do it out of the kindness of their hearts. Not because they're required to do it, out of the kindness of their hearts. I've seen people go like, "Oh my goodness, your guy's a captain in the Air Force. I'm gonna have this house cleaned for you." I mean, like literally, I've had that one. But they only have to leave it broom swept. If they do any damage to the house, you can note that during your walkthrough. You can go like, "Hey, we're not closing." I've actually had that one time. They did damage. Actually, it was double. They had not moved out. We were actually doing a walkthrough to go to sign. They weren't anywhere close to being moved out, and we saw they had done some damage. Guess what? We ain't closing today. Boop. We closed 3 days later when they actually got out and did what they needed to do. Biggest problem I see most of the time when people can't get out in time, it has to do with being cheap. They're trying to have their friends help them to get out and all that stuff. That's one of the biggest things I see. And second, they ain't got no money. Now, they may be walking away with $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, according to they have a house when they bought it. But right now they may be cash poor. So sometimes when people are asking to stay, it's because they're cash poor and they actually need the funds in order to move on. I actually had one case where the person didn't tell me until we're almost to closing. It was like, "Oh, I'm not moving until I get my check and I can pay the movers." And I'm like, "Ma'am, it don't work that way." So I'm telling you, ma'am, sir, it don't work that way. You have to make arrangements to be out of the house as the seller at closing. If not, you're illegally occupying the house. And with the way the laws are now, homie, don't play that. This next one, I know I'm doing a lot of stuff from the buyer side, but this one affects the buyer and the seller also, the appraisal. When the appraisal comes in low, what happens? Well, several things can happen. Number one, if it comes in low, you can go to the seller and go like, "Hey, we agreed to buy this house for $500, but the appraisal came in at $490. I want to pay $490. The seller can agree and you adjust the paperwork. Seller can disagree and you can say bye-bye. And guess what? Under a VA loan and an FHA loan, you even have more rights, but we may or may not get into that. When it comes in low, the seller is always going to say the same thing. "The appraiser screwed me." A high percentage of houses are overpriced. Everyone knew it, but the appraiser comes back with the true value of the house, and somehow that appraiser screwed the person. No, they gave you the value of the house. The same one that if you had a good realtor would have told you up front, but you brought in 5 realtors and you went with the one who gave you the highest price. Stop doing that. It's about the value of the house, not how high of a price or some BS. Let me tell you a story. Back when I was still on active duty, I had this guy in my squadron. I was gonna sell his house. Then he decided to do a for sale by owner. Most for sale by owners don't sell, and it's for these kinds of reasons. Because they, one, overpriced the house. And it was actually funny. He's like, oh man, I'm gonna lose money. I gotta pay out of my pocket. I'm like, I know when you bought this house, you're gonna walk away with like 50 grand. No, I'm gonna be losing money. I'm like, no, dude. I ran the numbers, showed him what the house was worth. Then his eyeballs started spinning. It was like, if I do this, I can get more money and more. And it was like, okay. Then he informs me he's gonna do it for sale by owner. Then a few weeks later, it's like, the house is listed. Well, how is it listed? Well, this agent came and she claimed that, she had buyers and all this stuff, and, but we put it up, and she said that they're an international company. I'm not going to say what company it is. And they already have the buyer. They're going to be able to bring all these buyers from all this. No, it doesn't work that way. So anyway, when it was all said and done, it took 10 months to sell his house. And he sold it for $20,000 less than he could have gotten. When your house sits on the market, that's what happens. That's why I keep preaching this stuff. Agents who are doing that, we call it buying the listing. But the only person who gets hurt is the buyer. The agent, it took 10 months to collect her money, but she got to collect her money. This guy in my squadron sat around for 10 months, making his notes, and ended up getting $20,000 less. It's because it sat on the market too long. Don't play jokes. Oh, also, here's another one. And I know this is mainly geared towards buyers. If you have to do something that is required to the house, aka like the AC goes out and you go buy a new AC, if the AC costs you $10,000, you cannot raise the price by $10,000. ACs are required. Okay, all you're doing is replacing a required item. You cannot raise the price. And I see people doing that, and it hurts them a lot. I'm sure the people who sold them the AC are glad. Next one, do they have to fix everything from the inspection? No, they do not. They don't have to fix anything. That's what negotiations are for. Be careful the stuff you ask for, because if it's working and you would just like it new because it's old, most of the time it's not gonna fly. I'm not saying that it's not gonna fly, I'm just saying most of the time it doesn't. A perfect example, water heater. Water heater may be 15 years old. The average lifespan on a water heater is 10. Well, I need them to put in a new water heater. It's working. By the way, a water heater can literally last forever. It's a longer story. I did a video a few days ago. Hopefully it'll get linked below. A water heater can literally last forever. It's just stuff you have to do to it, and it's basically annual maintenance. Air conditioners, they can last literally 30 years here. Average lifespan on air conditioner these days is 12 to 15 years. What it is people don't do the necessary maintenance to them. So do that maintenance. A person asked about closing and escrow dates are not always the same, are they? The closing is the close of escrow, okay? So that is when you close escrow, the buyer gets the house, the seller gets the money, although it may be, the following day if they did a wire transfer. But escrow is just the process that you're going through. The close of escrow is the final closing where everything goes to who it's supposed to go. And speaking of escrow, I'm going to add this one. I've only had it happen once or twice. When you're submitting your EMD, you must do a wire transfer. You'll be able to go and try to do a regular transfer, and all of a sudden you're going to be delayed by several days because they can only accept a wire, and they've got to refund you the money for you then to wire it back. The reason people have done this, and this is why I have to brief it now, is when you go into your bank, let's say you do online banking, when you try to do a transfer, it's free. A wire transfer is $35, and they think they're being slick by trying to save $35. No, you've just caused yourself a lot of pain. It's $35 for a wire transfer. So will they accept a check? Yes, they will. I've had some older clients who don't do banking or that way, and they are used to writing checks. Here's the thing, that check has to clear, and the time it's going to take to clear is probably going to be longer than the contract says you're supposed to pay the EMD, so you need to clear that with the selling side. Can be done, and I've actually had the same person do his closing costs that way too. It was interesting. We had to pay closing costs more than a week early just so it'll have time to clear. So we had the escrow officer gave him a greater bill than she thought it would be. That way they could refund him the difference. You have some things like you get in the prelim report that shows like what the seller owes. I have this one all the time. Everything on there has to be paid by the seller at close. If they're behind on anything, they have liens from the trash company, they have liens from the HOA, taxes, whatever. That is paid from their funds if they're getting funds. If they're not getting funds, they better go find some funds because there ain't closing unless that's taken care of. What if they're flat busted and they owe $6,000 to the HOA? They better find $6,000, okay? Now, what if they're doing a short sale? Well, short sales don't happen much anymore. But let's say they're selling and it's just a break even after they pay everything. And they still owe $500. They better find $500 or it doesn't close, okay? They have to supply those funds. Okay, here's an interesting one. And it's so common here, no one thinks about it. Let's say you put an offer on a house and they need to sign or accept by Sunday night, but for whatever reason, they don't accept it until Wednesday. Is the contract still good? Yes, it is. Don't worry about them not signing by that time, although you should probably worry about other things. Here's the thing. I'm gonna go two heads on this. I'm working with a buyer. You don't want them to correct it, because if they come back and do an addendum to change the date that they were supposed to have it signed by, you don't gain anything, but you may lose. So here's the thing. It's been determined by a court case that the contract is good, but now one-sided. They did not sign by the time they had to. In this court case, they went all the way up to closing and the buyer canceled the transaction. And the seller had to refund them their money for the EMD. And it was because of the dates. If they had cleaned that up, wouldn't have had to worry about it, or at least the seller wouldn't have. Now we're gonna go to the seller side. Here's the thing. Let's say you're supposed to accept or reject by Sunday and it's Wednesday for different reasons. Make sure your agent sends out an addendum correcting the dates that you're to accept it by. Chances of anything happening are like 1 in 1,000. Probably wouldn't even have to worry about it, but I'm just saying, cover your assets. But here's the cool thing about home warranties. They will cover that. I did a video a few days ago. See if it's linked down below. Maybe, they'll put it up here. And this will really help you out, because once you get that home inspection done, guess what? That resets the clock, because the home warranty companies don't tell you this little secret. Oh, you're gonna love the secret. Do you know if you didn't do this annual maintenance that I'm talking about, that they don't have to pay to get those items fixed? So your AC goes out in the middle of the summer, it's 115 degrees. They're not required to fix it unless you have 3 years of maintenance records. They don't tell you that one up front. They only tell you when the AC goes out. But let me tell you, if you have a home inspection, if it is working on the day of the inspection, that resets your clock. But make sure the next year you get it done, especially if you're gonna be maintaining. And if you have older units, I would maintain a home warranty. Speaking of home warranty, be careful of those, because a lot of home warranty companies, they SEO their stuff to the top, or they literally purchase, like, I'm trying to think of a good way to put it, websites that are really them, and they downplay all the good ones to make themselves look good. Don't trust it. The household names that you know out there, Old Republic, First American, American Home Shield, AHS, some of these, they pay. Let me tell you, if they don't pay, agents will stop using them, because guess what? First thing you're gonna do is complain to your agent, and your agent doesn't want any complaints. So, just a note, I have never had a complaint from any of the warranties that I have set up for folks. So just watch out for that one. Okay, this took me a little bit longer than I expected, but there are so many questions. And if you have questions, you can ask them below, or better yet, show up on Thursdays, 6 p.m. Pacific time. That's when I do my live stream. You'll see I'm in there answering questions every week. And if you have a question about real estate, specifically in this area, because I cannot answer the question about what happens in Michigan, because I am not familiar with Michigan law. If you need any real estate advice, need some help buying or selling, call, text, email, better yet, get on my calendar. Information's down below. If you thought this video gave you a little bit of advice this week and you found it valuable, do me that quick little favor, because it really does help my channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit a thumbs up, leave a comment, even share a video. It'll help a lot, and it'll help feed a puppy. And as always, to my military brothers and sisters, Alpha Mike Foxtrot, and to all the rest of you beautiful people, we're going to keep the lights on for you.